In 2021, Saudi Arabia bought Newcastle United for £305 million. In 2023, they signed Cristiano Ronaldo, Karim Benzema, and Neymar. In 2024, they secured the 2034 FIFA World Cup. And by the end of that same year, Saudi Arabia's public investment fund had accumulated over 910 sponsorships across global sport. 910. This isn't a country that loves football. This is a country that has identified sport as the most powerful geopolitical tool of the 21st century. And they're spending hundreds of billions to prove it. To understand what Saudi Arabia is doing in football, you first need to understand who is actually spending the money: the Public Investment Fund, or PIF. PIF is Saudi Arabia's sovereign wealth fund. As of 2025, it manages approximately $941 billion in assets. That makes it one of the largest sovereign wealth funds on the planet. And its chairman is Mohammed bin Salman, Saudi Arabia's crown prince, the country's de facto ruler. This is not a private investor buying a football club because he loves the game. This is a head of state directing national wealth toward a very specific strategic objective. And that objective has a name: Vision 2030. Saudi Arabia's economy runs on oil. Oil is finite. Vision 2030 is the kingdom's plan to build an economy that survives after the oil runs out. Sport is one of the central pillars of that plan. Not because football generates revenue, but because football generates something far more valuable: attention. Let's address the word everyone uses: sport washing. The allegation is simple. Saudi Arabia has a deeply controversial human rights record. Mohammed bin Salman has been personally implicated in the murder of journalist Jamal Khashoggi in 2018. Women's rights activists remain imprisoned. LGBTQ+ individuals face severe legal consequences. And critics argue that Saudi Arabia uses sport, the most watched, most emotionally engaging content on Earth, to distract the world from those realities, to make people associate the Saudi name with Ronaldo and Benzema instead of Khashoggi. Saudi officials reject the term entirely. They call it economic diversification. They call it Vision 2030. They call it soft power. The question isn't which side is right. The question is, does it work? Here's where the numbers become staggering. PIF acquired 75% ownership of 4 Saudi football clubs: Al Hilal, Al Nasser, Al Ahly, and Al Ittihad. Those 4 clubs have spent over £1 billion in net transfer fees since 2023. The most conservative estimate of total player wages and transfer costs at those clubs: over £2 billion. LIV Golf, Saudi Arabia's disruptive rival golf tour, has burned through approximately £2.5 billion since launch. Aramco, Saudi Arabia's state oil company, signed a deal worth $600 million over 4 years to become a FIFA worldwide partner. PIF offered $2 billion to buy both the ATP and WTA tennis tours outright in 2024. Saudi Arabia spent an estimated £1 billion in Formula One. And in December 2024, FIFA awarded Saudi Arabia the 2034 World Cup. The total scale of Saudi sports investment across all disciplines runs into the tens of billions. For context, this is not an investor seeking a return. LIV Golf lost $394 million in 2023 alone. Saudi officials know these ventures are not profitable. They were never designed to be. So if it's not profit, what is Saudi Arabia actually buying? 3 things. First, legitimacy. When FIFA awards you the World Cup, you are no longer a pariah state. You are a host nation. When the world's best footballers choose to play in your league becomes part of global football's conversation. Legitimacy cannot be bought directly, but it can be constructed, event by event, sponsorship by sponsorship, signing by signing. Second, tourism. Saudi Arabia received 100 million tourists in 2023. Vision 2030 targets 150 million by 2030. The Formula One Grand Prix in Jeddah. Heavyweight boxing in Riyadh. The Six Kings Slam Tennis Exhibition. These events broadcast Saudi Arabia to a global television audience and make the country a destination rather than a concept. Third, economic transformation. Saudi Arabia knows that oil will eventually decline in value. Building a sports and entertainment industry creates jobs, infrastructure, and tax revenue that persists after oil. When you host a World Cup, you build stadiums, hotels, roads, and airports. That infrastructure serves the Saudi economy for decades. The sports investment is not separate from Vision 2030. It is Vision 2030. The clearest case study for how this model works in football is Newcastle United. PIF acquired an 80% stake in Newcastle in 2021 for £305 million. At the time, the Premier League approved the deal only after receiving assurances that the Saudi state and PIF were separate entities. Many observers disputed that claim. Since the takeover, Newcastle have spent over £430 million on players. They returned to the Champions League for the first time in decades. Their shirt sponsor is Sela, a PIF-owned Saudi entertainment company. Their stadium naming rights are under discussion. Newcastle United is not just a football club, it is a broadcast platform. Every time Newcastle play on Sky Sports or TNT Sports, a Saudi entity's branding appears in front of millions of viewers. That exposure, across a full Premier League season, is worth hundreds of millions in advertising value. And unlike a traditional advertisement, it comes wrapped in the emotional power of sport. Saudi Arabia's sports strategy is the most ambitious and controversial in history. Whether you call it sport washing or Vision 2030, the financial architecture is real, the scale is unprecedented, and the geopolitical intent is undeniable. 910 sponsorships, billions lost on golf, a World Cup secured, and a sovereign wealth fund with $941 billion in assets that is only getting started. The question for football, and for sport in general, is not whether Saudi money is ethical. The question is whether the institutions of sport have the will to say no. So far, the answer has been clear. They don't. In the next video, we'll break down the business model behind Real Madrid, the club that generates over €1 billion in revenue without a state backer, without a sovereign wealth fund, and without a single controversial owner. Just sport, brand, and 120 years of institutional power. Subscribe to Pitch and Profit. No highlights, no hot takes, just the money.